As Nigeria prepares for the 2027 general elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, is pushing for electoral reforms to address long-standing challenges and improve credibility. Key proposals include early and special voting for essential workers and granting INEC the power to appoint resident electoral commissioners, RECs. The early voting proposal aims to enfranchise groups like incarcerated individuals, diaspora Nigerians, journalists, and essential service workers like INEC officials, security personnel, journalists, who are often unable to vote on election day. These changes, if enacted, could boost voter turnout and ensure broader participation, but implementation will require addressing logistical issues to prevent fraud. Another significant reform is transferring the power to appoint RECs from the president to INEC. This will insulate state-level electoral operations from political influence, enhancing INEC's independence. The reform also includes renaming RECs as state directors of elections with appointment based on merit rather than political connection. Well, joining us now is Dr. Sam Oguche. He's the Senior Executive Fellow at the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
Thank you, and I'm pleased to be with you this afternoon.
So how will the introduction of early voting and special voting for essential service workers impact voter turnout in 2027 election?
Actually, if you look at the past elections, you discover that the number of people that have been disenfranchised so far is enough to determine electoral outcomes. As we have seen, security personnel, election observers, even electoral officers, even ad hoc staff, all of them have been disenfranchised. These are people who have been unable to vote in the previous elections. And INEC has seen that the number is such that can determine electoral outcomes. So the proposal by INEC is in line with the Citizens Memorandum earlier submitted to the effect that these Nigerians should not be disenfranchised. So if they are allowed to vote, because these people that run into thousands are enough. So it's going to actually add to the number of people voting at elections, and you'll see that the voter turnout will improve. Because these individuals have participated actively in elections, but they have not been able to vote. So I think, obviously, it's going to determine a lot. It's going to add to voter turnout, and it's good for our electoral system.
Well, we know INEC on a normal day, in a normal voting cycle, has a number of hurdles to overcome that they usually never do, and it causes outrage amongst the public, but we always keep it moving. It seems they have a lot of logistical and security challenges every election cycle, not to talk about implementing any new measures that might be created, whether or not those might be positive or negative. How can all of this be mitigated, in your opinion?
Yes. I feel that these are challenges that can be overcome. We know that these challenges exist, but they are surmountable. With early planning and appropriate legal framework, these logistical challenges can be overcome, can be surmounted. So it is good now. Elections to a 2027 general elections, I think it's about 21 months away. So if we have it right, as been proposed, I think INEC will be on a solid footing to adequately prepare itself ahead of the task that they are going to be confronted with. I believe that with adequate planning, appropriate planning, and the right legal framework, they are going to surmount those challenges.
So how would granting INEC the power to appoint resident electoral commissioners affect the electoral process, particularly in terms of independence and impartiality?
Yes, this has been a debate, an ongoing debate. And stakeholders have expressed the view that INEC should have some level of independence in terms of appointments of key electoral officers. Now, the resident electoral commissioners are key to our democratic process, our electoral process. And if you look at what happened in Adamawa during the 2023 general elections, it tells you that without the power to appoint, power to discipline, INEC will not be able to tame the resident electoral commissioners, even the heads of elections, those in state offices. So it's going to impact on INEC's independence. And if you are appointing, you are able to discipline, then it gives INEC that leverage to be able to tame and control those that man the election. I think if you see what stakeholders have said in the past, they even want to extend it to others, not only resident electoral commissioners. But we can start from there. And that is going to actually impact and boost INEC's independence and neutrality in the electoral process. Power to appoint, power to discipline is actually key. I believe this will go a long way in strengthening our electoral process.
What role can civil society organizations like yours and the media play in ensuring success with these electoral reforms?
Yes, the civil society organizations have been working hard. If you see the outcome of the 2023 general elections, there have been reports. International observers, national observers, various interest groups have come up. And what INEC is proposing tallies, is in line with what the citizens have asked for. Like use of technology, part of what INEC is saying is let us clarify ambiguities in the law. Especially if you look at Section 60 and 64 of the Electoral Act, ambiguities between, transmission, direct transfer, or transfer, direct transmission. All those things are proposed by INEC to be clarified by this legal framework. Civil society organizations are also, in agreement with this because these are issues that have come up from previous observation reports. So what INEC is saying is in line with what CSOs have canvassed for in the past. And this is actually commendable.
So what potential challenges do you think could arise during the implementation of these reforms, and how might these be addressed?
Okay, once you are going to commence implementation of a law for the first time, you are likely to have challenges. Challenges will be addressed by INEC itself. One of the challenges will be how to operationalize early voting. What is the interval? From what time frame? What is the framework? Can those eligible for early voting vote from anywhere, or they must vote at their polling units before going on election duty? And how do you compile the election results? These are issues. In terms of diaspora voting, for example, are you going to have a separate voter list for them or register for them? These are issues. You have issues like special seats for women and persons with disabilities. What constituency is going to bring a special, or is going to constitute this special seat? What constituency? These are issues that the law that will come on board eventually will address. And most of them are going to be tackled by regulation, by power of delegated legislation that the legislature will give INEC. So INEC is going to largely determine the framework for operationalizing some of these things. Definitely there will be challenges, but challenges can also be tackled from experiences of other countries. Nigeria is not the first country to experiment early voting. Other countries are already doing it. Sierra Leone, Ghana, they are all doing it. So we can take example from them to see how they have done it and how it has worked for them. Definitely, other things that INEC proposed, the kind of unbundling its functions, establishment of the Electoral Offences Commission. This is a new body that is coming on board, if established. Political parties, regulatory agencies, these are coming on board. So challenges of funding, staffing, and all those things will be there. But eventually, with determination and appropriate funding, appropriate framework, we are going to surmount those challenges. But I can say that it's not going to be easy, but we'll try it and we'll get it right.
And in your opinion, would it not be, technologically speaking, would it not be beneficial for us to know the plans to improve the electronic transmission of results, BVAS, and all the other technical modalities that seem to have glitched during some of our elections? How it would also be helpful to know how some of these plans can enhance the transparency of the electoral process. and exactly what their plans are to combat any kind of cyber crime or cyber breach. What's your opinion on that?
Yes, recently the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies organized a dialogue on electoral reforms, and some of these issues came up. We had experts who came to speak on this, that the technical glitch is everywhere, but there will be room for compulsory testing of technology. When technology is deployed, if you look at the time of smart card readers, we had challenges with them, which we improved upon by the present beavers. So as we have experienced the challenges from 2023 general elections, going forward, those who man these technologies will be able to deploy appropriate mechanisms to tackle whatever challenge that will arise. So we have been assured by INEC that this will be smooth. And that's why INEC too is out to ensure that the legal framework governing use of technology is improved. So I believe that with the determination of stakeholders, use of technology in our elections will be great and our electoral system will be improved. If you look at it, even voter turnout, what we had in 2023 and the previous elections, there is a difference. In terms of accreditation, we have moved forward. So moving forward, technology has become indispensable in our electoral system. And I believe strongly that with the right legal framework and right people who man these technologies, we are going to make serious progress in deploying technology for our elections.
Now, Dr. Oguche, let's talk a bit more about granting powers to INEC to appoint recs. What checks and balances do you think should be put in place to prevent abuse of this power, if granted?
Yes, there is the power of legislative oversight. The powers granted by the legislature in every legal framework are not absolute. So there will be checks, legislative checks. CSO, civil society organizations will also be there to provide an oversight of the process. So if INEC is eventually granted this power, a power is not going to be left unchecked. There will be eyes on the especially legislative angle. The legislature will be there to watch how this power is exercised. The power of appointment is exercised. The power of discipline is exercised. So that where there is kind of derail, when the INEC derails, when INEC misfires, goes off the path, the legislature will be there to draw INEC back to the right path. And civil societies are also there, the general public. And that's why one of the issues in the citizens' memo is professionalization of this appointment, making it public so that the public can see the process. It should be seen to be transparent. And when that is the case, the eyes of the public will watch the process. Stakeholders will watch the process. And at the end of the day, all of us will see how it's going to play out. But I believe strongly that it's not a power that will be shrouded in secrecy. It's something that will be clearly defined so that INEC knows its limits. And when this is done, I know for sure that it's going to be good for us because the power, the need to discipline for INEC, because INEC is not the appointing authority, it is unable to do anything when the resident electoral commissioners misbehave. So if this power is given to INEC with appropriate checks around it, then it becomes a good omen for our elections.
Well, what legal frameworks and amendments do you think are going to be required for some of these improvements to actually go forward?
Yes, about 35 amendments have been proposed, some to the Constitution. For example, if you look at the issue of early voting, the diaspora voting, special seat, inmates' rights to vote, these issues have been proposed to be accommodated in Section 77, Sub 2 of the Constitution, Section 117, Sub 1, Section 132, Sub 5, Section 178, Sub 5 of the Constitution. Even in the Electoral Act, Section 60, Section 64, all these issues are accommodated in our existing legal framework. So it's a matter of amending them to bring in new things. So when the amendment, because there are certain innovations that will come in the Electoral Act, but must also have their root from the Constitution. because it is the Constitution that gives birth to the other laws. That is why the stakeholders or the legislature is working to amend or bring in a electoral legal framework. They are also working to ensure that the Constitution is altered to accommodate whatever new proposals are coming up in the Electoral Act. So, Constitution to be altered, the Electoral Act also is to be amended. And when these two are, reformed, they will provide adequate framework and foundation for all the proposals that have been made.
Well, Dr. Sam Oguche, Senior Executive Fellow at the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.